Vechain is on the cusp of either a pump or a dump. In this particular video, I'm going to dive into the world of Vechain and talk specifically about the price action of VET. And I'm going to go through the weekly, daily, and hourly charts and give you my thoughts and opinions on what I think is going to happen next. If you find this video useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, do subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here. Right, with all that done, said, and out of the way, let's dive into this technical analysis on Vechain. As I said, we're going to start with the weekly chart, guys. Really highlight that we are in good structure. There are 5 impulse waves starting from March of 2020 with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so wave 1 peaked up here around August time. Again, this was setting new all-time highs for Vechain at the time. We then pulled down into the second wave correction. This actually kind of bottomed out around November of 2020. This was actually more of a sideways trade, as you can see. We then went up to a nice, strong New Year start with wave 3 peaking out around the April time. Okay, so around 12th of April, week commencing 12th, was a peak of Vechain during this third wave to the upside. We were setting all-time highs all the way up there, and then we got into this sharp correction wave 4. This took us down to some interesting low areas, and ultimately we were kind of moving our way out of here by the end of July. Then we started to see a nice recovery to the upside, but then most recently a little bit of turbulence where we've seen about a 36% pullback and a little bit of recovery since then, but still the market hasn't fully recovered. Here you can see that the stochastic during the start of the bull run was oversold, pushing up into the overbought area for wave 1, down to the oversold area for wave 2, and up into this overbought area for wave 3. A little bit of volatility here indicated on the weekly chart due to the level of kind of manipulation that was going on with Bitcoin at the time. Nothing moves up in straight lines either, and in fact there were a couple of interesting corrections that we actually had to have on our journey to the upside. It made this 36% actually look quite small, with a bit of a 48% here, 30-odd% there, another 30% here, and 20% here. Ultimately, we did actually continue the push to the upside despite of all of these corrections that we had seen on the journey. So this 36% doesn't bother me too much, as it still is in line with the structure and is something that we have seen in pretty much the standard kind of day here in the world of crypto. So overall, everything is moving up nicely to the upside, where we can see another 766% in gains from our current position. Vechain is targeting $1.01, and that is based on the performance that we have seen so far, i.e. the top of wave 3 and the bottom of wave 4. These two, coupled together with a Fibonacci retracement tool, is indicating that $1.01. Okay, so this is something that we do think is likely to happen. It's something we just have to have patience on as we start to see this kind of level of push to the upside in the near future. But obviously we are more concerned about what is going on most recently. So let's jump down into our daily. The daily chart here, guys, shows us what is going on the smaller time frame and allows us to see how each day's candle is performing. Obviously, we can see that 36% drop, and we of course have had a good push back to the upside. If I actually grab my price range so far, we can actually say that from the low that we did actually go down to and where we are right now is actually an 18% bump. Okay, so although not brilliant, we have pulled back 36%. We have recovered 18% since. Overall, there's not too much I would be concerned with. There is, of course, the accumulation zone that we were buying into. Some fear was up for sale there. We can, of course, talk about the fact that we are oversold on our daily stochastic in the same way that we were oversold just up here. And again, we're oversold at this point. So what we're looking for is a good push to the upside to become overbought during this push to the upside here. Now, obviously, this sideways correction was perfect. This is exactly what we needed to see to take us right the way back down to this oversold area. And we were tracking nicely to the upside before Bitcoin decided to pull us down. So Bitcoin is the main issue that we have here for Vechain. Ultimately, Vechain is following Bitcoin's price action, as is most of the altcoin market. And as a result of this, if Bitcoin does decide to have a pullback, then unfortunately Vechain is going to do the same thing. Right now, being oversold the way that it is fine, but we can track down here for a very long time, as we have seen previously. Okay, so what we want to avoid is Bitcoin pulling back, and I'm going to get into what I can see happening with Bitcoin in a moment to help us understand how Vechain is going to perform. Ultimately, there's a bit of a choice to happen. Either Bitcoin is going to go up or Bitcoin is going to go down, and VeChain is going to follow suit. Right now, we obviously are in a key moment for VeChain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump on over into the advice.io dashboard and talk about that underlying data for VeChain. This will hopefully help us understand what could happen next. So for those who do not know, VeChain and advice.io uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to help us understand the underlying value of cryptocurrency. There is a link in the description below, so do check that out if it's of interest to you. It gives you a lot more insight than you get from the standard charts. Here we have a B2 rated cryptocurrency for VeChain, which is pretty good. It's not the best, but it's kind of mediocre. It's in the middle, nothing really too concerning. And when we actually take a look at some of the things that are going on with VeChain, we obviously have the profitability being an A1 rated cryptocurrency, which is pretty obvious considering it's had some very, very good gains over the last year and a half. We can see the Sharpe ratio is an A2 rating, although it is getting close to our 50-day average. It is still actually saying that it's pretty good kind of investment, right? The risk reward ratio is kind of in our favor, which is good to see. We have the moving averages. Now, this is where things start to differ a little bit. Here we can see that they've actually a C2 rating. So this is actually pretty bad. So our moving averages are being affected right now by what has happened with Bitcoin. We can take a look at the 𝗕𝗢𝗪 ratio in A2 rating. So liquidity isn't a problem either. Plenty of liquidity and nothing to report there. But then we get into the worst part, which is the fear and greed index indicating a D. There is extreme fear for VeChain right now. And again, I think this comes into the fact that the sentiment in the space is just not quite there. There's lots of things going on with Bitcoin that is basically telling people that Bitcoin is potentially going to pull back to 38k, maybe even potentially lower, before pushing on up again. Now, if that does happen, then obviously that's going to create a whole lot of fear for the space. It's going to mean that a lot of these altcoins are going to plummet down quite a bit, and obviously could have an impact on people's portfolios. But this would be short term. Even people who are calling 38k Bitcoin are calling it as a short term. Ultimately, I'm not convinced we are going down to 38k. I think the stock to flow model has had its low point for the month of September, and I think actually we're going to be pushing up in the kind of short to medium and long term here for Bitcoin. So overall, there's fear in the space, and obviously the moving averages have been affected by Bitcoin's recent behavior. Overall, even when you take a look at Bitcoin, this is also in an extremely fearful situation, right? So people are very fearful over Bitcoin right now. But the Sharpe ratio is still saying that actually the risk reward ratio is in your favor, right? And you can take a look at the moving averages, A2, profitability A1, 𝗕𝗢𝗪 A2, peak end value demand B2. So the the fear and greed index for Bitcoin is completely out of kilter. And when we actually take a look at Glassnode, here we can take a look at the percent balance on exchanges and where things have been previously, right? So obviously we can take a look at where things were at the beginning of the year, like in January, February. We can see that basically whilst Bitcoin was having a run, the percentage of balance on exchanges was actually decreasing, right? We had a good decrease over the time. And then obviously we get into April where things started to peak up. We started to see the balances on exchanges move up right into May. And we basically had good balances up, or I say good balances. We had balances of quite large amounts on exchanges all the way through to July. Then we started to see it drop down. And right now the balances on exchanges are incredibly low, the lowest they have been this year. Okay, so for all of 2021, this is the lowest amount of Bitcoin that's been on exchanges. So what's really interesting about this is obviously it kind of counters that argument of around that fear, right? There's loads of fear that Bitcoin's going to be dropping down. And what we want to do now is actually just take a look at the inflows and the total of inflows. And we actually take a look at where things were previously, right? This is where things were when we started to see the Bitcoin original drop down from those highs of 65k, and where the inflows are right now, they're significantly lower than they were previously. So although we are, there are people talking about Bitcoin dropping down to 38k, sorry, and I think, okay, cool, but that if that was to happen, we need to see Bitcoin inflows on exchanges. We need to see the balances on exchanges actually increase rather than decrease. So I think there's going to be potentially then a load of people who are going to be looking at short positions, shorting Bitcoin, thinking it's going down to 38k, actually for only things to move to the other direction. This is something that we've seen before when Bitcoin went down to 30k. just under 30k. In fact, loads of people decided to short it thinking it was going to 20k. In fact, what happened was it surged back to the upside. And I think this is all down to that manipulation in the space around Bitcoin and institutions deciding on which one to go after. They're either going to go after the long positions or the short positions based on which one's going to net them the most amount of money. So ultimately, I think using leverage is an incredibly risky situation to be in anyway. But right now, when we talk about going down to 30k, i.e. dropping 10k worth of Bitcoin price, I'm not seeing the amount of inflows required to do this, not yet. And again, unless they're going to do this very, very quickly, because obviously Glassnode's is day behind, right? So I can only see a day behind the data here. So for me, I'm not seeing that happening anytime soon, but obviously we have to monitor this situation, see this continue to rise up, and see whether or not this artificial intelligence is actually, picking up on people's fear correctly when everything else is actually being, picked up as in a pretty good position. So for Vechain here, to see that this is actually an extremely fearful situation, everything else is looking okay. The inflows and of course the balances on exchanges aren't quite where they are, and we think about potentially this decision to go up or to go down. This is where we need a little bit more help, right? We need to understand. Now, what do I think is going to happen? I think we're more than likely going to have a short-term pull back in line with that fear, and then I think we're going to surge to the upside on a more medium term. So here we have the hourly, okay? And on this hourly, we have a downward trend and an upward trend. This is something that we talked about last time round, and we were up against this area on the 15th, and then we broke to the upside here, okay? So we're talking about this move and the requirement of this move. Basically, when we were doing the video last time, we were talking about being down here, looking for this break to the upside. We got to the overbought area, and we started this pull back, okay? We're down to the oversold, and we haven't utilized this stochastic space very well, okay? And the reason for this is that fear in the space, right? There's not enough people wanting to buy the Vechain and the VET token right now, considering everything that's going on with Bitcoin and the things that they're hearing across crypto, Twitter, etc. So right now there's a reasonable amount of fear. So for my understanding of this, if that fear is to continue, we are more than likely actually going to push down on the shorter time frame, okay? And then that would correct our stochastic on the hourly. What we need to do is we need to see Bitcoin first push up and to squash out some of those fears when it comes to dropping down to 38k. And if we can do that, then I think we'll have a short-term pullback with a good term to the upside in the medium. Overall, I'm pretty confident in what is going to go on with Vechain on the longer time frames, but I am expecting volatility here on the smaller time frames until we kind of get through the next little stage of BTC. Ultimately, BTC is following everything, and Vechain here is at this kind of position where it could bounce from this area and actually go to the upside quite nicely, or pull back in line with what is going on with Bitcoin and the fear in the space when it comes to VET right now. Overall, though, if I am ever in doubt, I zoom out. I take a look at how things are looking on that daily, and I also take a look at how things are going on the weekly, right? I pay attention to the bigger patterns, as this gives me kind of stability in the space. It allows me to see what is going on those larger time frames and make sure that everything and the structure is still heading up towards our dollar. And I'm pleased to say that so far everything is. There's nothing that's worrying me on these larger time frames. Just a little bit of volatility on the smaller time frames. Patience is key. And guys, there's very few cryptocurrencies out there that have performed just as well. Okay, let's just take Bitcoin as an example. During March through to its peak of 65k, so March 2020 when it had its low crash, through to the peak of March peak of wave 3 for Bitcoin, it only gained 1,600%. Yet Vechain gained 18,000, okay? Anchor gained 32,000, Harmony 1 gained 18,000, and Matic gained 42,000, okay? So when we talk about performance, ultimately Vechain is going to net you more percentage points than you're going to get from something like Bitcoin. Don't get confused behind the dollar value of a cryptocurrency and the percentage gains that you can make. Right now, we are talking about 766% in gains, which is a nice substantial boost and will be significant on your portfolio. Overall, Vechain has performed incredibly well, and I think it's going to continue to do incredibly well once it reaches that dollar level. Guys, I'm going to leave that video there. If you have found it useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, do subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here. With this said, done, and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.